My name is Abina Johnson, and this is Focus on Liberia. Hit it! From Cape Mount to Cape Palmer, mountain back to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Pokonjre, to educate, elevate, and promote. Talk about home affairs, hey, in Diaspora, current affairs, hey, reliable information, history, talking about culture, hey, politics, education, entertainment, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our series, Moving Liberia Forward on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jar, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In this edition of Moving Our Country Forward, we're going to be zeroing in on education, specifically from kindergarten to 12th grade. Moving Liberia Forward, K through 12 education. What can we do to education, especially K through 12, to move the country forward? We want to look at the current landscape. We want to look at what can be done or the role of education in moving the country forward. What is needed, who can do it, how we can fix it, what's wrong, what's right, and all in between. Today, we have the honor to welcome Madam Elaine Saba, who is the Director of Academics at the Heritage International School in Monrovia. Elaine, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you so much, Dennis. I'm really honored to be here. And James, thank you as well.
Welcome. Welcome.
Let me also welcome my co-host, Mr. James Larsah. Mr. Larsah, welcome, and thank you for accepting to do this.
Okay, Dennis, as usual, it's my pleasure, always.
We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. If you have not done so already, please share the show, invite someone. Let's discuss how we can move our country forward. As you all may know, government is changing hands. During the previous government, we had a series here. James, I don't know if you remember, we used to call that innovative series. Mm-hmm. So how we use innovation to move the country forward. Now we are at the start of another administration. We want to say, what can we do? What are the areas? What are the things, those things the screws that we need to tighten to move our country forward? And we hope, our hope is someone is listening and going to take cue. Again, our guest, Elaine Saba, has been in this teaching business. And currently, she's in Monrovia serving as the head of academics. But Elaine, before we even begin, just want to get a few words from you. How you doing? How and exactly what you're doing in Monrovia, and how have your background in education?
So I'm doing fine. I'm doing well. Of course, it's hot, as I told you before, but I'm doing just great. So what I do at Heritage, as you so rightly said, I'm director of academics. I drive the curriculum there. I make sure that the curriculum is taught correctly. I make sure that teachers are teaching correctly to make sure that students are impacted so that they're working at their fullest potential. I also take care of issues that are parents related, teachers related, students related. So basically, I'm the one who's walking those classrooms every day to make sure HeLa students are very, very successful. Dennis, did you want me to talk briefly about my background? What allowed me to do this?
Yes, before we even go there, and before we go to your background, I want to bring in James, my co-host. James,
Okay.
just briefly, the series on moving our country forward and the role each of these areas can play. I mean, just talk to me briefly about the importance of this series.
Yes, the way I see it is that this will serve as an enhancer, kind of guidepost, voluntary guidepost that will help to provide information for both the public and relevant authorities so that when it comes to making decisions regarding the given topic, this can be considered a resource for reference.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
by the way, Jim is a graduate of College of West Africa. So we all
Yes.
came from school in Monrovia, and I'm
Correct.
next door. I wouldn't say next door. Monrovia College.
Yeah, the monkeys.
Right. So we are all from what people may term as elite schools.
There you go.
And then
There you go.
so again, Elaine, what is yeah, let's talk a little bit about your background.
Correct.
Okay, so I have my undergrad degree is in elementary education, and I did my graduate in curriculum and instruction with emphasis on teacher supervision. I taught in the United States for 27 years and retired in 2016, went on to start training teachers in the US. But during my time as an active classroom teacher, in 2010, 2012, I came to Liberia just for a quick visit and went to several schools and saw the what I thought the very dismal state education was in. I listened to principals. I actually talked to a principal and I asked him, I said, what is the teacher-student ratio? And he said, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. So that, that's just one thing among many things I saw that told me that we had a problem. So I decided after that, when I went back, that I would come every summer. Mind you, I was still an active classroom teacher. I decided every summer I would come and volunteer my service to Liberia. So I did that for several years. I would buy my ticket, come and find areas that I felt that most needed help in the schools. Even during Ebola, I was in Town training teachers. So like I said, I did that because I also wanted to understand once more how the Liberian school system worked. Because mind you, I have been teaching in America for so long and I felt I was a little bit out of sync. So I needed to get back in. So I did that and then eventually started a consultancy. I became a program manager for Teach for Liberia. I also became the CEO for Teach for Liberia for a short time. So now I am the director of academics here at HeLa. So I've been working in Liberia for some time now, and I understand the setting, the educational setting. And I always say to people, you have to be able to help in Liberia. You have to be able to contextualize the materials because you can't bring everything you learned in America and think that it will work here. We have a different setting. So basically, that's what I do here in Liberia, Dennis.
And briefly about HeLa, that's the Heritage International Leadership Academy.
Correct.
Tell me a little bit about that school. I mean, we left Liberia for some time now. I'm not familiar with that school.
So HeLa is an international school with international standards. And one of the reasons why I agreed to come to this school, I came in June, did a short stint with them, at their closing. Prior to that, I did a small little training with the teachers just to get a feel for the school. This school operates as though it were a school in the US. And I will always refer to the United States because that's all I know. Other than Liberia, that's where I taught. Standards are just where they need to be. Curriculum is adhered to. But most importantly, literature Literacy is stressed. Students are expected to speak correctly at all times. Students are expected to write. Literacy is stressed. The teachers that go over there have to be trained. They have to have some kind of teacher training under the belt where, it is the supervision won't be as much as if I were to go to another school where teachers didn't know anything. So it's a school with very high standards. They build leaders, and that's one of the focuses of that school, that students must be taught leadership, and it is stressed throughout the day. So yeah, it's a great school here in Liberia.
And before James come in, let's get to we said we want to know the role of education, something that some people may think is obvious, right? But I want you to summarize for me what role is K through 12 education plays in moving our country forward, and if that is not done well, or if it is not done right, what happens?
So we cannot continue to go as we've been going. Now, I've always maintained, and I still do, that this problem in education didn't just start overnight. It didn't start from a Weir presidency. It didn't start from a Sirleaf presidency. It's been going on for some time, right? So after coming back to Liberia for so many years, I started to see that there is certainly a decline, and our people no longer, it seems, have the ability to think critically. Very small issues, you have people walking around like they're in zombie land. And for our country to be able to move forward, we must have people who have some basic education. We have more children in the street selling every day when they should be in school. They can no longer, Liberian students for the most part, can no longer compete with their global counterparts. So how are we going to build this country when we have people that are functionally illiterate? They can barely read, can barely write, comprehend, basic comprehension, almost zero. How are we going to run the country with people that are barely functioning? A huge population of our country is illiterate. So for our country to move forward, to be on the same level as Ghana, as the other countries, we've got to educate our people to move our country forward. So it plays a very pivotal role, Dennis. It does.
Yeah, Dennis, if you don't mind, Elaine. So I know you're
muting yourself again, James. Unmute, please.
Yeah. That was intentional. So I was going to ask Elaine about the information she has basically provided about some details of the institution. I just would like to know other aspects of the school's profile in terms of when did it start, whether it has more than one location, and if so, where are the others? And then succeeding questions will follow.
The school started, from my understanding, 5 years ago, because this year they should be celebrating the 5th anniversary. And it only has one location in Congo Town on Old Sophie Road. Yes.
Is there any plan for expansion, or it's still only it's a pilot project that is going to take a while? Any plan for expansion? Immediate plan?
You mean for the school?
Yeah.
Well, the school is up to 12th grade. In terms of, yes, it's pre-K to 12.
Okay.
They actually added 12th grade this year. So it used to go up to 11. I think the year before it went up to 10. Keep in mind, I'm just joining them this first year, so I'm giving you as much information as
you are doing pretty well. But you already jumped ahead of my next question. I was going to ask. It sounds like a very great undertaking, and one will assume that it will be way up there. And if that were the case, I'm going to ask you what has been the performance of the students in the national exam. But with your answer, it doesn't seem that can
It's
be. Yeah.
let me proudly say it's always been 100% when I looked at the records. And those teachers do a fabulous job of preparing those kids. And I'll tell you, they do it just like how when I was an active classroom teacher in the States, in the States we gave standardized exams, right? Each state's exams, they're called something else. I taught and retired in Texas. So I went through three different kinds of exam. It was the teams test, the tax test, the STAR test, because I taught for 27 years and they would change those tests after a few years. So what we used to do, and any teacher out there, this is for free. You're not paying me for consultation. Grab as many old tests as you can. Develop or create manuals out of them. It's not so much for the kids to memorize everything that's in there in your manual, whatever you've developed, but there is a language that is specific to testing. If students can understand the language of the test, most times they'll do well, because sometimes they'll know the information, but they cannot interpret the questions correctly.
Correct.
And I trained some students in Dennis. I don't know if you remember in Painesville a few years ago, where 100% of those kids passed the test. And all I did, James, I just grabbed all questions from years and years and tutored those children for an extensive time. Those kids went 100% to pass the test. So it's not magic.
So
that
was another school. That was another school
yes.
that you helped at the time, right?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. That sounds great. Yeah, you're talking about going to the question bank where you may have many questions as possible, covering many years. By the way, I used to work with the West African Examinations Council.
Wonderful.
And when I was in school and in 12th grade at CW, we had one instructor, Mr. Doe. All he did was to go to bring all questions. I'm telling you, we did so well in the exam. But look,
exactly.
All right, a few more questions here. So,
sure.
There are Liberians who are listening to you here, both in Liberia and here, and might listen to the show and get interested in, having children or relatives attend your school. So, can you? I understand you say it's in Congo Town. If you can give a little bit more specific information about the location, that's good. And secondly, what income level? What level of income earners you think the students will be coming from? Is there a specific income level? Do you have to make how much before you can afford to send the children to that school in the typical Liberian context economy?
It's an expensive school, James. It's a school where teachers, which is unlike so many schools in Liberia, teachers earn like $1,500 a month or so. Those teachers are well paid. Yes. So it's an expensive school. I'm not going to tell, because education is expensive, but guess what? Try ignorance and see which one is more expensive. So yes, but the point of, and let me just say this. What happens to our children who cannot afford to pay school fees like those? I think that should also be our focus, right? So what happens to government schools? What happens to the schools we used to go to before, where we didn't have to really pay for good instruction? How can we get back to that? Isn't that what we really want to focus on?
And that's why my question there is, how is this? What is the support from government, or how is the Heritage International School, or how does it link up with the Ministry of Education? What is the cooperation? What is the level of engagement there?
Well, with any private school that is run correctly, it has to go under the umbrella of Ministry of Education, right? You have to fall on it, because there's some guidelines they have that if the private schools, regardless of them being private, they have to adhere to certain guidelines. So yes, it walks hand in hand with Ministry of Education.
So the curriculum there is based on the Ministry of Education curriculum.
It's a mesh. It's a match. So where in any school I go in, as a curriculum person, and I don't like to call myself a specialist, but as someone who studied curriculum, and I've done this so many times, if I see that there's somewhere it's weak, I will go even in the US, you get some supplementary material from outside and you add that to strengthen whatever it is you're teaching the students. For example, I took the Liberian curriculum from pre-K to sixth grade, and I looked at how they were teaching the materials. So I took activities and put activities in all of the from pre-K to sixth grade, just because I felt like they weren't teaching it in ways that would be appealing to all students with different learning needs. All of the activities said, put them in group, have them talk, whereas I went in and put in a lot of hands-on activities and all of that. Of course, we're not using what I did at Gila. This is just something I did for myself, and I'm more than willing to share with any school who's interested in having it. But it's just, I use local resources to teach different ways, different activities, for those skills that I mentioned in the curriculum from pre-K to sixth grade.
That takes us to the current state of K through 12 education in Liberia. I don't even want to say Liberia. Let's just do Greater Monrovia. Let's do that Masurado County.
Exactly.
Because you don't want me to tell you about what's going on in my hometown. So what is the current state? How is it like? What are the issues?
The issues from what they appear to me are huge, beyond huge. One of my biggest concerns is that people have schools that have no business having schools. People that have no concept of how to teach, of what education should look like, have schools open and making money from those schools, right? So in a community where a child will probably have to, pay maybe $50 or $100 a whole year, you have these students going to those schools and coming out and can barely read or write. High school graduates can barely read or write. So we cannot gauge Liberia, the education in Liberia, by those private schools like Gila, right? You can't. But what you could do for a school like Gila, you could use their methods to strengthen what we do in government schools. Use it as a sample. Take a look at it. What makes this school work? You understand what I'm saying, Dennis, James? What makes this school work? Can we take this and spread it to the greater Monrovia or to the greater Liberia, right? So the situation is dismal. We have got to do something. For one thing, I'm concerned that, again, I stated it before, that too many of our young children are not in school. You have families who will say, oh, well, I can't send all three, so I got to pick one to go to school. And when they do go to school, they're taught by people who themselves should be taught. Yes.
But so what is responsible for that? Why that is happening?
Well, again, the system has just been going down. And to me, it more supervision. Okay, say if I were talking to Joseph Walker right now, James, Dennis, this is what I would say to him. And people who know me, I'm so passionate about this. I say it all the time. Let's make education a priority. Being uneducated, it's not fashionable. It's not how we identify with each other, right? The top person, the person who will put at the very top of education must know something about education.
Correct.
Now, granted, all skills are not transferable, right? Just because I know how to teach, just because I know a curriculum does not mean that I could be a minister. No. The person that you're going to put on the top, my suggestion, incoming Buckeye, make sure that person has an education background, leadership background, and some kind of management background. Or surround yourself with people who, maybe your deputy who have management background, leadership background, but I want you as the minister sitting there to know what education should look like. You must have taught. You must have gone through an education program, because it's going to require For it to be fixed, it's going to be required for people who know about education to go out there and start going into those schools and doing some serious supervision. Close down some of these schools that are just making money and educating our children where they can't even read when they leave from there. So that's. Should I go on what needs to be done?
No, we'll get to that. James has some questions.
Okay, yeah, well,
Okay.
I know you. Yeah, I did ask about the income level. You kind of answered me, but in another way, what is the average cost for a student? Because if I wanted to send 1 or 2 persons
Okay,
there,
Jim, you're focusing on the school, but
Yeah, Jim, let's leave the school. Let's leave Hila for a minute.
okay, I thought it was a promotional, so that those.
No, we don't. We
this is
want to
good news.
promote how we can move education forward.
Okay. Well, look, I was just in Liberia not long ago. In fact, I have made several trips there, and in my district, going between Lofa and Bon County, I went to various towns, many of which I saw school buildings abandoned. Some of them have been eaten away by time and decay, and the students were meeting in the open, wide open, under the Palava hut. So, in my own town, the government removed the harmonization. They removed those teachers, gave them no benefit. They didn't pay them, and so they refused to teach. And those who have passion wanted to stay on to teach. There were fewer, and they couldn't get money, and they were asking for any private individual that would pay them like $50 a month for each. But as a result, because of lack of support, students will go to school 3 days in a week, and 2 days they will go on a farm for one teacher, and then the next day for another teacher. And like that, you can see why you're talking about the poor the poor quality of education going on in that country. What's your own idea? I know you just suggested about those who will be in the educational sector should have some exposure to academic preparation, but regarding such, what specific ideas you can offer for that?
well, for one thing, we got to make education a priority and put money into pushing education and changing it. Then also we should have trainers at different levels, county levels. So if I'm from Maryland County, I need to have trained people to go there and train those teachers. I need to make sure that the same kind of school building that's here, that we build those same kind of buildings in Maryland County. So we have to have consistency all around. But and if you make education a priority, then all of those things, you have a structure. I spoke with someone yesterday and they asked me, would you be interested in the ministerial position? And I said, no, I'm not ministerial. That's not who I am. I'm too much of a hands-on teacher. However, if you all can get a committee of sort or an advisory group, board or whatever, of people who know about education, let us help you structure it, put it up. Then you can get your ministers, you go on, you do your thing you need to do, but we will help you drive it because we know what we're doing. But don't put people over there because they're your cousin, they're your friend, they're your this and that. No, we want real educators, James. I'm looking at that building in some place. Why is it when we have so much money that we say that goes to our education, why do they have those kind of buildings? So we just need to really make a priority.
Let me show you one of those buildings, and I want you to define this priority, but let me show you one building in Riverside. It's a school.
Look at that.
And another group, they don't even have a building. They have to do it under the trees.
Just outside.
But my question is still on the current state, right? If you look at the Ministry of Education curriculum, what does that tell you? Oh, okay, and let me preface that by saying I was talking to a friend, the student, the son went to school and was sick. And he came out and said, oh, man, the doctor went to the school, they put some kind of thing on my face, and they say I was sick. What he was trying to describe was a thermometer, trying to say, they took his temperature. So I'm saying to
Mhm.
myself, why would someone who is 7 years old does not know what a
Mhm.
temperature is, what a thermometer is? So
Okay.
when you look at the curriculum, what are some of the issues that you see?
Okay. Let me just say this to you. When I compare the current curriculum now to the curriculum I saw in 2010, 2012, the curriculum has certainly improved tremendously. And what I like about it, it focuses on early childhood, which we should be focusing on. So the curriculum is not bad. It's a good curriculum. The only problem, as I stated before, they don't have enough activities in the curriculum so that we're teaching using different activities. They're all the same activities. So that's why that's my only problem with it. But as far as the content, it's strong. Now, what good is a strong, a robust curriculum if you haven't trained the teachers, gentlemen, to how to teach the curriculum? Then it's no good. You understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
what I've seen teachers doing, they jump because they're not competent. They will jump from one topic to another topic, and they will leave. And keep in mind, learning is you build
Yeah.
upon, right? You build upon knowledge to learn. So if they cannot teach division, they will jump from addition and go somewhere else and leave, or multiplication, the grouping. They will jump from there and go straight to division and leave our multiplication. When you are teaching, there is a sequence you have to follow for understanding, especially for young children. You can't jump from addition, go straight to division and leave multiplication out, because then the concept of grouping is totally lost and it's harder for the students. I hope I'm making sense. So
Yeah.
what good is a robust curriculum if your teachers are not trained to use it? That's what I am. Usually when I go in public schools, very basic things I do. Teach them how to write their lesson plans. And I take the Liberian curriculum, I open it, and I teach them how to utilize it. Can you believe that? Teacher trainings. That's basically what I do when I go to government schools here to help.
So how are the teachers recruited? I mean, how do people get in the classroom to teach?
Here in Liberia?
Yes.
Well, from my understanding, they have teacher training institutes. They have, for example, AMEU, they have a teacher. I did a small training with them one time, and they have a teacher education department. So they have education departments in different schools. There's a teacher training institute in Kakata, I believe. So they do have teacher training institute, and there's another one, Lagosi, or like there's another one here, and the Ministry of Education gives out different levels of certification. So what most schools ask for is the basic C certificate. That means you've gone through X number of hours of training, and it says that you are competent to go in the classroom. My problem, gentlemen, my problem is that the people, I think, that are training these teachers themselves need to be trained. Let me just give one very small example. I have heard several Liberian teachers, oh, Miss Saba, you know, the child slow. That's why the child ain't understand. And I said, what do you mean slow? Oh, they can't learn fast. Really? What happened to the background information that you should have taught this child for this child to understand this next step? It's missing. You cannot call a child slow unless you are a medical doctor and you have diagnosed a mental retardation or learning disability. I don't want to hear you calling a child slow. I mean, something that may be simple to us.
Yeah. They
do it all the time. They say all the time to students here. And I fuss and fuss and fuss about it. So, I mean, the problems are huge. They're huge. We have to invest in teacher training. We have to, Dennis, and you've heard me saying this many times. I go on every show I write, make education a priority. Train the teachers. We have to train them. Now,
what does that mean, though? Make education a priority in specific terms.
Put money towards education where it's supposed to go.
Okay.
And train your teachers. Very simple for me. Now, as far as organizing the system, I would like to see principals of schools held accountable for the performances of the students at those schools, because they blame the teachers for everything, and they act as though they distance themselves when those schools are actually under their watch. So if I'm a principal, if I'm director of academics, where I am right now, if my students failed the national exam or failed any standardized test that we gave at the school, I'm going to look at myself. How well did you look at those teachers to make sure that the teaching practices were best practices, right? How well did you monitor them? I will hold myself accountable. So these schools, we have to hold principals accountable for these schools. And I've said that many, many times.
Elaine, look, I was in, like I said, I was in Bon County for quite a number of times. And I observed that while the educational system, or at least the condition of the schools, the condition is so bad, I observed that the structure was good. Like the district education officer, the county education officer, they were in place. They seem to be relatively funded. But that you couldn't see that manifested locally when you go in the towns where the schools are. It just couldn't show. Now, here's my question. I heard you did appear passionate about your concern that if you had access to JMB, you will be stressing that certain level of authorities should have some academic preparation or exposure. I would like you to elaborate a little bit more on that in terms of what level of authority you're talking about: county education officer, district education officer, or principals, or public schools, or teachers. That's one. And then my argument is that the key problem is investment. The investment in education is just so bad. Of course, you have the conflict of interest. I'm going to bring that later on. But can you just address yourself to those two questions? One, you want to elaborate on what you meant when you talk about having access to those who will be making decisions soon, and why there is a big contradiction between the structures in the educational sector compared to the practical evidence of that in the condition of the school.
Okay, let me take one at a time.
Correct.
So when I said the head, for example, if I'm going to be Minister of Education, I got to have a background in education. Okay. Everybody who works under me has to have a background. My deputy, my assistant minister, my this one, we all must have a background in education. That's what I meant.
As far as how far does that go? To principals, education officer, county?
Everybody, okay, everybody. Good. But it starts from the head.
Okay.
Right?
Makes
so
sense.
One of the things, James, I'm finding too many people, like I said, running schools, principals, have no idea of how it's done. So how can you run something when you don't know what it's supposed to look like or how it's done? You don't even understand it. You see? So you have to, for us to be able to fix this, we have to be able to say, okay, I got background in education. I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. And another problem I have, even if you have a background in education as a college professor, trust me, you cannot handle elementary education. It's a whole different ball game because the requirements are very different. You're dealing with children who you have to really break it down, for them to understand it. Lots of visual aids. Those are the formative grades. You have to know, you have to have a lot of reading background to teach them how to read. They got to be able to not only comprehend, but decode words. So yes, you must have a background in education, please. So what was your next question, James? I missed that one.
Talking about the structure, like I said, the placement of the structure that covers education, county education officer, district education officer. They seem to be relatively supportive from what I saw, at least.
How many counties you went to, if you don't mind me asking?
I only went to Bon County, not to my satisfaction, but they seem to be better than what I saw in the towns, But even at that, I just couldn't see what they were doing in their areas, in the towns
Mhm.
where the schools are.
Mhm.
It was just so
Mhm.
bad. I'm telling you, when I went, there was nowhere I went where teachers didn't
And
ask me to find, salary, some stepping for them. Yeah.
it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem here and I will keep talking about Monrovia. It's a huge problem. There are 2 or 3 schools here that operate as though there were schools that are in foreign countries, right? And then you go a little bit down the street and you see schools that really should not be in operation. So it's just everything is just so it's so unbalanced, unfair. And it's because, James, because we do not have a system in place that will govern every school. There has to be consistency from school to school to school. Look, Dennis, I can go from here to the next school and tell you I'm in 5th grade. My records don't necessarily have to follow me.
Right.
You know why? Because a lot of these schools are for profit.
You're
So
right.
if I'm coming and I'm paying that $100 this year, that's all you're concerned about. You're not going to run behind me to get documents, authentic documents from the school I went to before. So there has to be a structure, a tight structure in place where if I'm leaving from school A, we're doing subject and verb agreement in English, right? If I go to school B, I should be doing the same thing. If it's government school now, I
Yeah.
should be doing the same thing, or maybe just a little bit before or just a little bit after. There has to be uniformity in our schools, and our expectations have to be the same all across. You understand me?
Yeah.
So that if I shouldn't leave from here and take my own documents and carry them in my hand. If I carry documents and say, oh, my child in 9th grade, well, you know very well that child in 6th grade. But there's no accountability because
Yep.
most of the schools here are for profit.
Right. And I don't know how we came to this point, right? I have a friend who operated a school on the pipeline road, and it dropped from high school to junior high in few years because he said he was so strong. I talked to him most of the time. So he was so strong on the students. There is no buying grades, and because of that, they left and went
Mhm,
to areas.
mhm,
I said,
mhm.
but how do they go? He said, they go, they will accept them. They don't need
Yes.
anything from the previous school. So
No.
you,
No,
you
you
just
don't.
said that. I also, how have we come to this point? Because when we were, I went to high school in the 80s, we didn't have this much proliferation of
Mm-mm.
private schools.
Mhm,
Now it's for money making. And so
mhm.
government now is like waiting. They have just abdicated that duty to private people. Because someone was telling me within the last 30 to 40, there had been no new public high school in the Morovia area built. So
Really?
it's like
I
we are
see.
expecting
I
the
didn't even know
private
that.
people to just take over.
Mhm. So I think it has happened over the last few years where you know we let go of so many things, of over good oversight. So because of that, we're here where we are right now. Um, I would like to see many of these schools shut down. But in order for us to shut down, we have to provide government schools. We have to provide standard education for our children and do away with all of these private schools that really are not teaching our children anything.
Yeah, I saw a proprietress. She came to America and she
Hmm.
was operating school after her husband passed away. She was operating a school.
Hmm.
And I found out that she barely can read and write.
You see?
But she's she was this big. But one thing I also noticed, and I don't know if that's still a problem, is the foundation, kindergarten. If we're in a school, the best teachers are the ones that are in the upper grades. The one who is not
Okay.
able to do anything is normally sent to the kindergarten. Is that
You
still
are
happening?
so right. And I fussed about that. Yes. So they will take somebody who probably has an 8th grade education and put them in pre-K, kindergarten, the preschool, when it should be the other way around. So preschool, pre-K, all the way up to kindergarten, for those teachers should be strong. They should have a strong background in phonics, in decoding words, in comprehension because they are preparing them they're driving the education for later on. If you brought your child to me, Dennis, and your child is in, or James, your child is in, is pre-K 3, a 3 or 4 year old. I want your child to be reading in about 3-4 months. You understand me? I'm not joking. I'm going to make sure your child, I'm telling you, but I have to, for that to happen, I got to know what to do. So I must have been trained in how to teach reading. In the US, for somebody to be a pre-K teacher, you have to have more reading hours than somebody like me who taught from 2nd through 8th grade. You have to have more reading hours, and you have to have a special certification to teach at that early level. That because you are building the blocks for those students. But it's the opposite here. So they take somebody who barely got a high school diploma, sometimes 7th, 8th grade, they put it in kindergarten or first grade, you know, or pre-K rather, you know, they just go teaching the ABC. These people don't even know
how to sing.
Yes, and how to sing, how to color.
And that's all you do.
A lot and so on. Yes.
Let's go. I know we described a lot of the issues. How do we fix this?
But I already said it. We just need to make sure we put a structure or plan in place. Get some kind of advisory committee. Let them sit down and structure it. We have a lot of Liberian teachers in the diaspora who have taught for so long. I said to someone, can you not make an attractive package? Let them sit down, come and help, and let's structure this thing. Some of them are retired. Give them a little package. Let them come back home. Encourage them to come home so they can train teachers or, you know, or do something. But we need a good structure, a plan. We need people who know what education is supposed to look like to sit and plan it. Then you can go ahead now, you get your minister or your deputy minister or your people up there. But get it planned, get it structured. You understand me? Put everything in place so that you know that, okay, I've got 5 government schools here. I'm going to have this supervisor or this person who's over the 5 schools in this area. They're going to be checking those schools all through the week. They're going to be going there, talking to this principal. Make it a duty for them for oversight. Oversight has to be a priority.
Correct.
You can't just build a school, leave it, and say, okay, the principal will do whatever he wants to do. No.
And eating that is an important point. That's why I often don't just easily agree with some who, upon hearing the critical role that Liberians from the diaspora could play in Liberia, you know, they often, you know, develop some angst about that, and they want to make negative comments. But the fact is the fact. You have a very great pool of talents in this.
Exactly.
And it's the talents are needed back home. So, like you said, bringing them back will be good. However, Elaine, you and Dennis just spoke about the proliferation of private schools. I think even to call the level at which it is now, it is just so deplorable.
Yes.
I'm not quite sure to describe it as private school is even befitting. And I thought to give it a proper description would be to call them for profit schools, but even that does not seem sufficient to me. Is it like greedy school or what? Because it's like everybody is opening school not for the values, the intrinsic values that obviously should be there, but simply for getting money and with complete neglect for what the purpose should be. So again, you talk about priority. There will be a need. There's a commission on higher education in Liberia at the Ministry of Education. I think there's also a commission for elementary and middle school and high school. But there is certainly a need for that to be brought under the spotlight, for that to be addressed. And correct. Let me listen to you. You've spoken to that already. Correct.
I have heard them about 2 years ago. I forgot the project I was working on. I think I was CEO at that time, where they actually went around trying to close down some private school. I think they've always, in all fairness to Ministry of Education, they've always and threatened them, if you didn't have this license or this will shut you down. Now,
Okay.
I never follow up on that. I have not followed up on that. But going back to this for-profit thing, you know how many people have said to me, "You sure you want open school? That quick way to make money in Liberia." I'm like, open school for what? So this business of education, if you are not an educator, we don't want you in it. The only way we're going to fix this thing is for people to leave education alone and stop seeing it as a money-making entity. You understand me? And I am tired of Liberians saying the teachers, no, you are not a teacher unless you have gotten a degree and you have gone through several years of teaching children, and we have seen results. So let's stop this. Let's stop it. Our people are suffering. It shouldn't be a money-making business.
Right. And let's speak to that. Kalebo Gonglo say, Dennis Jai, one does not have to be educated to own a school. Establishing a private school is a business. You can hire educators to operate it. I want you to speak to that. But my thing is, we always think, we always don't look at our own peculiar situation to address our needs. We are using universal stuff, right?
Oh, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So the situation we find ourselves in this country now, we cannot say, oh, it can be a business. No. We want consistency, uniformity. We want a standard that every school will adhere to. We don't want it to be a business in this country any longer, because if I owned a private school and hired somebody to run it, if that school wasn't doing what it was supposed to do, and I didn't know anything about education, how will I correct it? How?
Yeah, exactly. So I think Kalebo is right, yes, but Dennis too. Dennis just missed the point there, that it has to be balanced. It shouldn't just be about a desire or your ability to establish a private school. It should be about what are the values involved. Like, I'm a project manager. I have a project. There are contractors trying to get a business. They will send me their whole profile. And it will not just be about who owns the company. It will be about what are the professionals, the specialists, how long they've been there, what are their achievements, the complete profile. So it's not just about coming to implement the project. It's having the talents, the experience, the credentials, and all of that. So it shouldn't just be about the ability or the desire to want to make money by opening school. It's about
that's the problem.
Bring
yeah.
in. You're going to open a private school. How many teachers you have? What is the qualification that they have?
What are their credentials?
Right,
What
is the experience? Correct. Things like that. We need that.
And I was not saying the example I was giving was the proprietors could barely read and write. I mean, I get it if you are you don't, let's say, I'm not saying you have a teacher's degree first, but you should have some level of education that will make you to see. Now, or Cisse Goya, who is a teacher here in Minnesota, is doing very well. He's saying charter schools are not required to be owned by educators. And I'm not really talking just educators. You have a degree. So you can speak to that, Elaine. And I also...
Well, the little bit I know about charter schools in Texas, everyone who teaches in a charter school is a certified teacher. So those people have a certification system that is in place. We can't try to compare ourselves with what goes on in America with charter schools, et cetera, et cetera. Our setting is different. Let's get our system, our education system under control to where it needs to be before we start to talk about what's happening in other countries, charter schools and all of that. We're in a dismal situation right now. Our children are sitting taking exams that they can barely pass. And that the next thing that irks me, gentlemen, is why aren't we writing our own exams?
Exactly.
Why not?
And Elaine, it is fair to say that those who are commenting are doing very well. It's good that we are hearing from them. And to me, it seems that the points being made are obvious. The challenging question here is, what do you do about a condition as the one we have in Liberia, where schools are being opened by private owners, but also they are far below standard? There is no
far below
visible manifested interest in the values of education that should be passed to the children. What do we do to resolve that? Any comment coming in that respect will also be helpful.
Well, the first thing is, like I said, if you have an oversight, good oversight, have a standard, a criteria for you to be able to open a private school here. You must meet this criteria, right?
Yeah.
So your teachers must be this. So if there's good oversight, by all means, open your private school. I got a problem with that.
Correct.
But you can't just open a private school where you're grabbing people all. And here's another huge problem that I'm seeing. Teachers are teaching 3-4 different schools. So they come to this little private school in the neighborhood, they make $50, it may be $40. Then they go to another school, 2-3 days, they make $20-$30. So they're teaching 3-4 schools at one time. They don't know their students because you can't get to know your students. There are too many. You don't, the subject matter, you're not spending time to study it before you try to present it to the students. So it is a mess. It is a mess. And I love that our people are calling in and talking, but look, if you came here and you saw what was going on, you would be more frustrated than me. And I've been doing this for so many years.
Are they still beating people in school?
Some schools do. Some schools do. Some schools, they make the children hold the chair over their heads when they misbehave. Can you believe that? They'll have a chair, the chair with the armchair. What we used to use. I don't know if you went to university or used of Liberia. Dennis, did you go to University of Liberia?
Yes, I went there.
Do you remember the chairs we used to sit on with the arms, Sonny, those heavy big chairs?
Right,
they make them lift it up and put it over their heads for punishment and make them stand up in front of the class. You understand me?
And another thing is money, right? I look at the national budget. Like under MCSS, for instance, we saw that in one budget when Nathaniel McGill was a minister, the budget for the presidential affair, his ministry, for stationery is more than the stationery budget for the entire MCSS.
I wasn't even aware of that.
Yeah, so everything comes with money. And it's whatever. So when you were talking about prioritizing, because the stationery, so I'm wondering, I mean, what's the presidential affairs minister going to write compared to MCSS?
See, that's it continues to hurt my heart because Dennis, James, my children are not better than Liberian children, right? The same education my children have. I want the same education for our children, right? Because what's happening to our country, we are not building leaders. So what's going to happen 10, 20 years from now? These kids that just keep selling in the street, what's going to happen to them? More and more Zocos? That's what we want? No. So we've got to fight, and we've got to fight honestly for a good system. We have to.
Let me welcome the FOL education analyst and consultant, Mr. Cisse Goya. Mr. Goya, welcome. And he's also
How are you, Mr. Goya?
I'm well. How are you all doing?
Well, thank you.
And if you want to join the conversation, the number is on the screen, 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403#. Mr. Goya, let me hear from you. Comments or question, anything you want to add to the discussion?
Yeah, well, I like the discussion that we're actually discussing education, and it's a good topic. I came in on the tail end, and I had some disagreements, and I kind of wrote them in there. There are some things I agree with. A lot of things, matter of fact, that I agree with. When we're talking teachers training, when we're talking about how to close down low functioning schools or how to deal with low functioning schools. However, what I disagree with is the idea that in order to own a private institution, a private school, that you have to be an educator. I went to a lot of private schools that were owned by churches. The priests were not educators, but that's where you got bored of education.
But they're educated, not necessarily educators. They're educated.
But here's the thing: even if I'm not educated, if I own a school, I am not the principal of the school. Those are two different things. If you're telling me in order for you to run a school, in order for you to be the administrator of the school, you must be educated. That's a different thing. But I can own a school without being the principal. And there are a lot of those happening in Liberia where people own schools, but they hire educated people or educators to run the school. And that's for me, that's the difference I wanted to put in there. That I don't.
You are correct.
An institution.
You are correct, but in our unique situation in Liberia, what I have seen so far, people that I've interacted with, they don't even know what they're doing, right? So in order to own a school, yeah, you don't have to be educated. You maybe, but in our specific situation, I believe you should be.
Well, so then in order for you to own a gas station, should you be a petroleum engineer?
You're talking in general. I'm talking.
Here's the thing, Dennis.
We have a crisis. We have a serious problem in Liberia.
And I agree, but I think the way you address that is not to fundamentally limit people who want to get into education. I think what you do is to say, in order for you to run an institution, in order for you to administer an institution, you must be educated. You must have this degree. And I would even go further to say, in order for you to be a principal of an institution in Liberia, you must have an advanced degree. And we're talking masters. That should be a requirement. That I would agree with. If you're going to be a principal or an assistant principal, you must have an advanced degree. You must have taken at least 13 or 15 credits of education. We should make that a requirement. But to own a school, I think that is where, for me, I have.
Here's a key. Here's the issue. Yeah, I think the point of whether it should be a prerequisite for an education in case you want to own a school. I think that was just a minute part of the discourse tonight. We are basically concerned about the real situation on ground in Liberia. The dominant concern here has to do with proliferation of schools that are very, very poor standard, no quality, and it's all about getting money. The teachers are not qualified, even in most instances, the principals, and therefore, in fact, that's why the question of the ownership, because often the owner might be the principal or so. So you might want to kind of, reflect.
Right. So James, that was
why I don't want us to dwell on this a lot.
No, I'm getting past it.
Yeah, let's get past that.
That was what I said. When I came on, I said I agree with a lot of things you said, right? And then I said the only thing I don't agree with, because I agree with a lot of things that you said. And moving forward, Dennis, I think you follow my writings that I've been putting out there since this government, since this election. I've been trying to hold these people are coming in their feet to the fire. Because James, you're right, and my sister Elaine, you're absolutely right on the myriad of things that you lay out there. Number one, education should not be a McDonald's job for people. You know, in America, the first job kids get when they graduate high school is to work at McDonald's. And that is what seems to happen in Liberia, is that people go to teaching as this is where I'm going to be until I can find my next good thing. And that should not be the case. So you don't just pick every Tom, Dick, and Harry and put them in the classroom. You're right. And to my brother James's point, there are a proliferation of buildings, because I hate to call them schools because that's a disrespect to school. There is everybody that get a little warehouse that can partition into rooms causes a school. And for the life of me, the Ministry of Education that is supposed to be enforcing is not doing enforcement. So let's take, for example, in a neighborhood where there are a lot of underprivileged children, and somebody opened a lay piazza school. What people don't understand is that education at the primary stages, pre-kindergarten to sixth grade, is where the foundation is laid for education. If we allow our scholars, our kids to go to these substandard places, and they are already damaged from the beginning, that is why we get people that go to high school and they struggle in Liberia. That is, and
not only that too. Not only that, the data says there's a high dropout rate.
There is, absolutely.
When they start up that week, the tendency to drop out is much, much higher.
Yeah, and if you cannot even read,
issues.
If you can't even read, and you can't write or do math at grade level till you get to third grade, the data here shows that you are always behind till the end, and then most of those people drop out of schools. My prescription is that the Ministry of Education ought to use the system they already have. The system that is already in Liberia is you have a county educational officer, you have district educational officers, and they partition every county into educational districts. These DEOs are supposed to be the one looking at data that the principals are collecting from within their districts. These principals are supposed to be doing the work where they are overseeing their teachers. And these teachers are supposed to be teaching and getting professional development. If you use that process where we see one school in District A is consistently failing, they're failing by WAEC, they're failing by, every other standard,
WAS.
then what we need to do is to say, well, here's school B, they're doing well. How do we partner the principal of school A with school B and give them some education to help them? And if we determine that they're just beyond the pale, we close it down. I think the Ministry of Education ought to be doing that. But what happens in Liberia is we label the school as failing schools. We say, I can't graduate, but we keep it open. And people children still going there.
Right.
So why are you keeping it open and you're allowing people children to go there, but you're calling it a failing school?
I'd like to add something to that. Actually, I agree with some like you, but there's something. I'd like to see smaller oversights. I think there are too many schools under one DOA. So I think we need more people qualified. And I was back to what I was saying. So that oversight is always there. Somebody is constantly walking those classrooms. Because of the situation we're in now, maybe later on we can relax some of it. But for now, we got to be extremely vigilant and smaller numbers, my brother, smaller numbers of schools under one person. And not only that, but you know what I was also thinking, there should be competition among these schools too. The high performing schools, let's see how well I can perform like this other school here. And that was why, back to my point I was saying, to hold principals accountable, hold everybody accountable at every level. You see, because if somebody is not going and checking on this person and this person checking on, if it's too big like that, they get lost in the system. Let's make the schools instead of 10 schools under this one person, 5. You're responsible for 5. I need to see you at these schools. You go to some of the schools, the ceiling falling, the office. I've been in schools where there's so much mold, I got to run out of the building. And you can't tell me someone been there and checked that building out. So it's because there's no supervision.
Touch my heart, for God's sake. Let me bring in one caller here. Kalebo has been on. Kalebo was teaching Touch My High. Mr. Gonglo, quickly. Mr. Gonglo, are you there? Mr. Gonglo probably went to sleep.
Yep.
Okay.
We lost Mr. Gonglo.
Mr. Gonglo, go ahead.
Are you getting me?
Yes, sir.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay. So, all right. Thank you, Dennis. Let me unmute myself on the other. Let me unmute myself.
Just turn whatever you're listening to. Just turn it off.
Okay. No, I'll turn it off now. So I have a few points to make. First, this is a great show, at which I had a time to join the show. First, let me start with something that we overlook. There is a Primary Education Act. I think that act was revised in 1976 under President Tabo. And under Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, under Dr. Joseph Cotto, they revised the Primary Education Act. That Primary Education Act calls for 25% of the national budget to be allocated to education. No government, whether it is Sanodo, whether it's Charles Taylor, whether it's Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, whether it's Georgia, no government has honored that, and no one speaks about that. There is a reason why that was put there. If you don't fund education, you're going to get the mess you have. You are window dressing the issue, and it will compound. And that's one thing we should be aware of. The other thing I want to bring out also is the University of Liberia, where I taught for some years. And I went back and worked with the University of Liberia a few times. I even wrote the first undergraduate program in statistics. I wrote the curriculum. They are struggling with it now. I wanted to be the head, but they let me leave the country. That was fun. So the College of Education, go back and look at it. They've been graduating less and less teachers from the teacher college. In fact, I remember one graduation I participated in. We didn't have anybody from physics and math to graduate from the teacher college. And the Department of Mathematics skipped one graduation ceremony that no one graduated from the Department of Mathematics. So you notice that we are graduating more students in sociology in the country, in demography, in economics, public administration management, than in the sciences. Okay? And those are real problems that we overlook. Then focusing more on maybe teacher qualification and certification are important. But if we're not encouraging more people to get into the field of education and give them better training, then you can't serve the demand side. The students are demanding education. They want to be educated. So people are making ends meet to say, well, we have more demand for enrollment. We have more enrollment, but we don't have the trained teachers. How do we do it? So now I'm going to switch to there was mention about the National Commission on Higher Education. I know Elaine tried to be political here. I don't know politics doing hard work. They are not doing the damn hard work. This
What's your language, Caleb?
They are part of the problem. Okay? The Commission on Higher Education, to address some of these difficulties, the low graduation rates for trained teachers in LU, what they've done is to actually just create, they say, C certificate training program. So they just certificate, and then, those who are retired teachers, it's a black belt school. They just go there, they give you a certificate that, yeah, you can go and operate. And so you have more people who are going and they get a C certificate. It's a money-making thing to get C certificate now. You can need, I don't know some of them, I used to have a list of them on top of my head, but I don't have now. But it's good if you contact the Commission on Higher Education. They are actually certifying people to do black belt training, training program all over the country.
Thank you.
And what they say in-service training. So they go in the village and say, yeah.
Thank you, Calabo.
So,
but let me end on this. Yeah, Elaine is in Liberia. Her data is harmonized.
Consistency is important. Let me end on this one thing.
Okay.
I like that.
Look at the government of Liberia record. For the last 40 years, the Moriffa Consolidated School System, MCSA, government of Liberia has now built no new school. The same old MCSA normal school building you have, Doe, Taylor, L.M. Johnson, Sally, Georgia, they never built any new MCSA school. As a matter of fact, MCSA school number has declined because we used to have Esther Bacon and all these, they dropped out because Esther Bacon is somewhere on 11th Street.
Central High is no more.
Yeah, I know.
So government has built no new school. So and the population of Monrovia is great, and the demand for public education is great.
Correct. That is
important. That's why you see the proliferation of business, commercial schools.
Thank you.
Let's face the fact are
Good
supposed
point,
to
caller.
be the
Good
problem.
point.
Elaine Lola will have part 2 of this, though.
That's what it looks like.
Correct. And look, Dennis, I just want to make a point quickly, an observation.
Hold on, James. Let me bring in one last caller here.
Great.
Caller, your name and just a minute or two.
Mr. Jai, you know my name, my number. This is Elvis, calling from Minnesota.
Go ahead, Elvis.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Mr. Gongo just touched on a little bit that I wish he would have emphasized on is the money. All of these things take a lot of money. We're talking hundreds of millions, if not into the billion, if we want to be really effective. One of the things I also want to point out is the logistical problems that we're going to face. There's the child who is in the village in Littleton who can deserve the same level of education as the child who is in Tinker. How do you get teachers there with the incentive? Those who are really qualified have the good teachers training and a good education to want to go into those villages and live there and teach. Because they too have to worry about their own health. Where if they get sick, you can go to a decent hospital. Their kids have to go to a decent school.
Yeah.
So recruitment of teachers in those real-world conferences is going to be a challenge because most of the teachers who are educated and have the requisite experience and knowledge will probably want to work within around Monrovia rather than going into the quote-unquote hinterland. So planning is essential. If we have a government program where we can start recruiting teachers once they're in teaching college and asking them if they're willing to go into these places with added, stipends or added benefits and try to recruit them and get them to go into the tier of the country because most of them are very proud. Believe it or not, it's not even Monrovia. Most of them, in the province outside of Monrovia.
Thank you, Elvis.
So the money
Dennis?
is key. Money is the key. And we have to have a government that's going to work on the economy to raise a lot of money. And if we do that, we have more money to spend on important things like education rather than just paying our government officials. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dennis, may I respond, please?
Yeah,
well,
sure.
Just like what I said, why should we recruit teachers to go in those different areas? Why don't we take the training to those different areas? So why do all the trainees have to remain in Monrovia? Monrovia is not Liberia. So if I took a training crew or have a training crew with the same standards, right, gentlemen, with the same standards in each county or city or town, hold your trainings there. Use local people, teachers. The teachers are all over the place. The teachers are there. People who want to teach, train them the same standard so that we don't have to pay a relocation fee to recruit teachers from here, because that was a huge problem we had when I was CEO for Teach for Liberia, to get people to recruit people from here to go into those underserved schools. That was a huge problem. So it's better you take the trainings to them and recruit local people from right in those in the surroundings. Mr. Goya, you got any point?
Yeah. No.
Mr. Goya, just hold on. Let me get Glendy before
Mr. Goya looked like he let to argue. That was asking.
No, I'm not arguing. I agree with you. Let him bring who's bringing on. Now I'm gonna agree with you.
Call out your name and where you calling from.
Hi, this is Glendy, Jane Juniors, and even though I'm under the weather, but I'm extremely proud of the show today. I want to compliment my sister and my brother, of course. And I also want to buttress the point that Elaine made. I think it's important for the incoming government to right now look in our Liberian community and seek out educators and find out what is it that they can do to be able to move forward in a direction that promotes better education for Liberia. One of the things we have a problem with in Liberia is that we have expert knowledge or people with expertise, and we don't use them. And so it is incumbent upon this new government to be able to change the dynamics and change the direction of education now, where those things that we learned growing up, our children and the young children in Liberia can also benefit from it. So I think this is a good program. I hope you all will continue to do it. We have a NAV, genius, and an educator. These are people. Let's put people in positions that have the training for it, and not like Elaine said, let's kind of point people to position because of affiliations or because they're my relatives. Because the education that we learned back then is what we have continued with today. So great program, Dennis, and thank you for this. And I hope we can continue this.
You can always count on Focus on Liberia. In fact, Cisse used to volunteer. He wants to go to teach. They said no. But let me take my last caller. Yeah, I keep saying last.
That's fine.
Call your name and where you calling from.
Hi, Dennis. My name is Tanan Freeman. I'm just calling to thank you guys for the program, and two, I don't know how to contact someone. I think it's Miss Elaine Saba.
Yeah.
I'm able to volunteer my free time. I'm actually a reading teacher, and so I'm able to volunteer my time. If for planning. Reading instruction as needed, and I spent about 2.5 years in Liberia recently, and I know exactly what we're dealing with. So, if somebody can take my contact information, that would be helpful.
Definitely. The number you're calling from, I have it here, and I'm going to pass it on to Elaine right away.
You're in Houston?
Thank you. Yeah,
You look like you.
Texas,
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And what's your name again, please?
I was I'm daughter to white guy and Famata Freeman, and he passed away. I don't know if you know those individuals, Willama Freeman, and those that crowd.
No.
So it's just imperative that we help.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
What's your first name again, please, caller?
Tene. Tene.
Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
Tene. I will call
Thank you, Tene. We will definitely get in touch with you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Mr. Goya, and I was giving the example. The school that I graduated from in my hometown, Dominican, the best in the country. We tried to put money to raise it up to high school, and said we will pay the teachers. Government can let us. Yeah, but Mr. Sise, you're
So I agree with everything Elaine said earlier. So I was not trying to argue. My point I was trying to make was to elevate what you were saying, right?
I know, Mr.
I ran an educational nonprofit in Liberia called LEAP, Liberian Education Accessibility Project. And we went every time during the Ellen government and half of the George Weah government. What we used to do is exactly what you're asking. I used to go in villages and do teacher training. Or outside of Monrovia and pay teachers $5 per day US to come from the villages and we offer teacher training. And we try to see how we could elevate that. You will see how when teachers came, I didn't just train them, I trained them and give them curriculum materials. And then I let them go. And every time we start finding out as we go further, teachers that we had before will pay their way and follow us to come and say, Mr. Goya, you're doing this work.
There's a huge need.
And because once you take the training to the people, it gets a lot easier.
Yes.
You take away a lot of the burdens that they have that will prevent them from coming, right? And so I agree with you on that. One of the things I'm a math teacher. I'm a licensed math teacher in the state of Minnesota. Actually, right now, I'm the director of math for Minneapolis.
What's your level? What level are you teaching at?
My license is 512.
Okay.
And I also teach at a community college here during the summer. I teach math, so I've been teaching algebra, geometry, calculus, pre-calculus, and HL math. But currently, I'm out of the classroom. I'm the director of math for Minneapolis Public Schools. So I oversee 93 schools under my control, kindergarten to 12th grade.
So you see, somebody like you will, be able to advise.
Here's the point I'm coming to. Just hold on.
Yeah, but my eye already on you. We're coming for you.
Beyond that, the new math the state standard for Minnesota, math state standards. I was one of 3 co-chairs that rewrote the math state standard. So every mathematics that a kid learned in Minnesota, beginning 2025 for the next 15 years after 2025, we determined that. We wrote it out. We determined that. I offer that service to Liberia. That's what Dennis Jai was talking about. I offer that service to Liberia. And I said I could go home and sit and look at our standards and try to rewrite our standards. And in the state of Minnesota, I was also most recently on the Professional Education Licensing Board, which is where we look at teachers licensing and say, yes, you can continue to
determine, yes.
We offer to put those in place in Liberia. And so we could come and lay a bare bone. Here is the problem. I said I would take my entire summer and come to Liberia. I would feed myself. I would drive myself. I would house myself. I said, but
you buy your own ticket.
In order for government to have a skin in the game, I said, buy me a ticket to come to Liberia. I don't care which airline you put me on. Buy me a ticket. I spent 3 months free working for you for free. You know what I was told? By people in CDC, government. But when you ought to pay away to come like bro, government money looking for a pay away to come like bro. I was dismissed offhand. And this is what we're still offering here. Look, a caller spoke about the gap, and I like to refer to it as the rural-urban education gap. The further away you move from the city of Monrovia, the lower your educational standard drops. The lower the quality of education drops as you move further and further away from the city center. That is not fair. If Calabo spoke about the 2011 Education Act that was revised in 2011.
Right.
One thing that has not been looked at also is that Article 6 of the Liberian Constitution guarantees access of education to all Liberians.
For all, yeah.
But Dennis Jan know, as well as a lot of you would know, when you are far away, like in Lofa County, for example, to find a high school, some people have to leave their villages and go 25, 30 miles. If I'm leaving to go 25, 30 miles, I'm no longer available to work with my parents on the farm.
Exactly.
And so now I got to go to the city to live there and go to school. And so I think one thing we need to do, what the government needs to do, is there are a lot of people out there that got university degrees, right? They major sociology, they major all the other things, and they are unemployed. One of the things we did in Minnesota when we started finding that there was a teacher shortage, we came up with a pathway, an alternative pathway to education, to become a teacher. Where
alternative certification?
Yes, where people who have worked in industry,
right,
we can bring them in. Right? People who got degrees in engineering, they can become math teachers. People who are economists, we can get them back in the classroom. I think what government needs to do, especially this incoming government, is to leverage that 25% that is required for education to try to see how we can repurpose. It's almost like you find this plastic bag these days. People are taking plastic and repurposing it. How do we repurpose these educated people that are unemployed and try to get them into education, get to put them into the classroom? I think that would be a bigger bang for the government money because we already got people with degrees. They're already out there. We just have to start a way to see how can we repurpose them, how can we recycle these people and put them into the classroom. I think that would do a lot. But my sister is happy to meet you. I'm glad to meet you. Get in touch if there's any way I can assist you. I'm always available to help Liberia. I am a trained math teacher, and I hope that somewhere along the way, Liberia will need math people. But we keep offering, and nobody takes our offer to go and help our country. And you know, people just think everything is political, and it's not. Education should never be politicized.
But since you proudly talked about writing curriculum, I always try to be humble. I got to be proud and talk about myself too. I'm on the committee that wrote the math for the Mansfield ISD district. Maybe 10 years ago. My name is on that curriculum. So, hey, more power to Liberian teachers. We don't have STEP. We don't have STEP.
Thank you all. And definitely we're going to have part 2. In fact, Dr. Edison Pajibo is going to come here so we can talk about higher education. Education all the way. And Ms. Elaine, and of course, she said, I want all of you back so we can talk more about education.
Yes,
we are almost closing now. If you still want to call, if you want to call, I don't know, or call my number because we are closing now. So let's conclude by saying, we have a new government. What do we want is what do we want to see done? I know they're going around. It's time for recruitment, and it's time they're doing everything they can. And you were talking about repurposing, right? I went to visit my friend at the gender ministry when I was in Liberia, and I saw that the place is so full that they cannot fit in the office. They are in the hallway. So I said, number one, when you talk about repurpose, still take your pay. But when you're in Banasville, just go to Gurus to teach. Don't come here because too much traffic. You are in the hallway, you don't do anything.
Right.
So that came to my but let's talk to the new government as we have 10 minutes to close.
And who you want me to start?
Yeah, please start. What can be done?
I'll go back to what I originally said. The structure that has to be in place has to be put in place by people who understand what education should look like. We need to really focus on primary education. Get people that know how to teach primary education to drive that structure. People who know how to teach middle school, high school, let them drive that. But allow the people that know how to teach sit and help you plan there. Look at my brother Goya. I didn't even know you were doing this kind of stuff. We remember I talk about Liberian teachers in the diaspora. We have them. Let's tap into them. I'm tired of being one of the few that came back home to work. There's so many of us. We have what different areas of expertise. Let's tap into them, make it an attractive package, bring them home, even if they're just coming to help us plan. Let them come help us plan. And if we want to keep them long term, hey, more power to that plan. But that's what I think the government ought to look at.
And some of these people, they are very young. They just got their young children that even when you say come for vacation for a few months, they will be happy to have that under their belt.
Yes. We there's a strong a primary teacher, Agnes Tikla. What's Agnes' last name? I'm calling her middle name, but she's very strong. This woman retired from early childhood teaching. That's somebody like that we can get to come here and help us, show us. There's a new thing they call Jolly Phonics now. We no longer teach phonics the way we used to teach phonics before. And Goya, I see you nodding your head. Look, you get a student just for a few weeks, teach them Jolly Phonics before you know they start reading. It's just a certification process. So, that's the kind of those kinds of plans we have to put in place.
Mr. Goya, let's talk to the new people coming in.
So I think the first place I have to start is funding. Like I always tell people, budgets are moral documents. They're not just financial, they're moral documents. You fund where you find moral. So if education cannot be funded, then you're telling us that you don't value education.
Exactly.
So I think the first place is to be intentional about funding the educational sector. And I'm particularly concerned about K-12 or pre-K-12. Right, exactly. We can deal with colleges later, but you have to be intentional about pre-K-12. And if I really want to even go micro, I'm really worried about pre-kindergarten to 6th grade.
Exactly.
It's where you put your smartest, your brightest, your most focused, you shine the light most over there. Because when the love of learning is built in those primary years, when the foundation is built in those primary years, you'll find that scholars come to 6th, 7th grade, 8th grade, and 12th grade and going through university with that love of learning.
Yes.
But they first have to be inspired somewhere. That spark has to be lit somewhere. And you cannot have people who are just using education as a stopping ground, being the first introduction our kids get to education. This is where people stop liking education. This is where you find people say, I don't like math. I don't like this. It's because their first introduction to math or to education was through people whose heart was not in it and who did not have the qualification and did not have the support. So I say support. I say rethink the KRTTI, ZRTTI model. Try to replicate those across the nation. And think back about how do you incentivize people going into teachers college, whether it's at the University of Liberia, whether it's at K-2 University College. As a matter of fact, we should try to make it in a way that every functional university in Liberia has a teacher training, has the teacher college. And that we write out a curriculum for those teachers colleges and we implement them. And we get those people and we feed them into the hinterland. But until that can happen, we need to recruit a lot of people who are in the diaspora that are willing to help. For me, I'm not leaving my job to come to Liberia, but I can write our curriculum. I can help out the system out. But there are a lot of retired Liberians that I know that are eager to come back to Liberia and help. And this is not about people coming to take other people's job. It's just to brush the road so you can see your way and then you can create it however way you want to do it. My next piece is about the MCSS model. Have we really gone back to check? Is it working? And if it is working, why don't we replicate it? And if it's not working, why don't we get rid of it? Why do you have an MCSS in the middle of the town and everything else is just left loose? If that tightening worked, why don't we have one for Pinsville? Why don't we have one for Kakata? Why don't we have one for Bummy? Like my sister was saying, make these things smaller. So instead of having DEOs over 20 schools, maybe we start to build those consolidated school system and have people leading them and we can check them. One last thing that I do in this state, in Minnesota, with my teachers, is every time we get scores back from the MCA, the Minnesota Comprehensive Exam, which is like the national exam, we check it and see in math, what is the percentage of our students that are failing? Which strand are they failing? The algebra?
Are they failing the most in?
How can we help these schools? How can we help these educators so that they help our scholars? And we have to be able to look at that forensically and see where are we missing the mark? Is it with support for our scholars for their mental health or for their social health? Or is it with training for our educators? Or is it with supplies? Is it with funding? We have to forensically and holistically look at that and provide a solution to our people. I think one last thing, and I'm going to say here, and it's very controversial, we have to start writing our own test that determines.
Well, I said it. You and myself on the same page. I said it.
Pull out of WASC. We need to pull out of WAYEC. We need to ensure that the Ministry of Education in Liberia sets the guidelines. Because the only way we will know people are following our curriculum.
Exactly.
It's already based on our standards, and when people are failing, we can say, here is why you're failing, here is how we provide for the teachers. Until that can happen, we're wasting money, we're wasting talent following WAYEC. We need to get out of WAYEC and write our own national exams.
And Goya, you know what concerns me sometimes too? We know sometimes tests are biased, they have biases, right? Sometimes I'm wondering whether those tests are biased. So our children may not understand something about Ghana, or so I'm concerned about that. And how can you test that which you have not taught? Sometimes our kids not taught those things.
I just posted today when I saw things fall apart that we all did like a Bible. I mean, for God's sake, we have the first Black person to write a novel come from Liberia, and we're not teaching that.
And we're not teaching it. Exactly.
And we knew about the Igbo land more than we knew about Plibo. What's going on with us here? Now we have this WAS and WAYEC, and even after the test, the statistics we get, number of girls fail, number of boys fail. What do you do with the outcome?
Thank you.
You don't improve anything. We just get pass or fail, and that's it.
And it's customary for us to do data analysis when students sit and take standardized tests. We want to know why so many students fail on question number 5. What standard was it addressing? Why did this? And then you go in, you zoom in on it, and you work on fixing it so that it doesn't happen again. What's happening with the analysis? And like
you're talking about Igbo land, right? I know my brother James will come in real quick. You're talking about we know more about Igbo land. Look, there are students that are going to Swakoko Public School that don't know anything about Madame Swakoko.
Look at that.
That don't know that she was the only female warrior that led an army. They don't know that. People are in Sanikwale and don't even know the importance of that name and where it came from. The people go to Lango Lepe High School and know absolutely nothing about Lango Lepe.
G.W. Gibson. They don't know who he is. We're teaching what they call, about the Confederation, the Confederacy, and nobody knows. The trees that I used when I was growing up. Right now, if I want to set my trap, I know a special tree to use. If I want to build a raft, I know a tree to use. If I want to do axe, I know the tree. What are their names? They are nowhere in any book. So all that knowledge is wasted. Anyway, I want to thank all of you for coming. We want to close here. So let's go around the horn for your closing. And Jimmy, you wanted to say a few things before we get to that.
So I just want to say a lot of important points. I think there are in my view, three key factors responsible for the deplorable state of education in Liberia. But before that, I just want to ask someone who did work for WAYEC and understand the working. I do know that in Liberia, we have subject officers. Simpson, for example, Simpson Tonola Vapula used to be the subject officer for chemistry. The Associate Supreme Court Justice, Kaba used to be subject officer. So we have Liberians who will work for WAYEC in Liberia and will be subject officers for different subjects and will contribute test questions from Liberia to be part of the questions from the West African Examinations Council. And they will come before the Senate, they will come and administer mock tests in the schools to test our ability to respond to those questions. I'm very reluctant to change things in the absence of compelling reasons. In Liberia, nothing works. Much of our problem has really to do with the political instability we have, to tell you the truth. And we have to be careful how not to drag it down to make misrepresentations in other areas. I do recognize, though, the important points of things fall apart. I had to memorize that entire book.
We all had to.
Yeah, on the Daniel study. Yeah, to pass, you know, so I understand
Yeah, we all had to.
But there's my view here. I think what Brother Kelbo Gonglo said is strange to me. I haven't heard it that 25% of the national budget should be applied to education. I mean, I don't know it to be that it should be statutory. All budget laws are statutory. I don't know whether that was an exceptional law that was passed that was supposed to be standing for us ever. If that was a budget that was passed during tougher days, it was just for a year or 6 months or so. If so, then it can be replaced and readjusted. But the fact is that we need to prioritize education to the level of the budget. That will, he said, that will represent our moral concern for what the importance of education is. I also think there is conflict of interest. You can have education minister owning private schools, deputy education minister owning private schools, and he's going to close other people's schools down while his are there. So Elaine has said that she has heard about warning going out so that against those schools that don't meet standard to be closed. She wasn't sure whether they were closed. Now Zize came and said some schools are closed, but probably they come back again and reopen. So we need to look in those areas because again, a man who wants to open a school should not only be solely motivated by his desire for profit. There is a compelling reason for him to have interest in education, even if he is not by profession an educator, or even he's not educated. The primary motivation must not be money. It has to be interest in education. That point too needed to be made. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Elaine, you're closing.
Oh, just very quickly, I'm not going to give up fighting in Liberia for all our children to have equal standard education. I want it to go back to the government. I want to take it away from private schools because our people are barely feeding themselves. They don't have money to feed themselves, and you're looking at them, expecting them to be able to pay for private school, good private schools for our children. So it is my fight, along with, now I've just met a brother who is strong in education. All of us have to fight to bring education back to our people, the kind of education we had many years ago. That's my closing. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Mr. Goya.
I think I need to build on where Elaine stopped, because she's right. If education is cost prohibitive, then it's not available. I know the story of so many market women are so bitter for the children to go to private school because the public schools were not eating and they were not appropriate. I think, though, what we could do right now in the interim is to say, government, can you subsidize in those places where we don't have public high schools or public schools? The private schools that are doing well, can you subsidize them so that the cost is not cost prohibitive for those students in those areas? And gradually we take over and government can build more and more and go out. But I agree with you, Elaine, education should not be cost prohibitive. My last thing is, I will hope that somewhere in a curriculum one day in Liberia, standards one day in Liberia, that we will study the monkey bridge, that the math and the physics and the chemistry and everything that is involved with the monkey bridge in Liberia, that people can sit and look at it, because this brings me back to why we need to get rid of West African Examination Council, because education is supposed to be local. In order for people to want to learn math, I got to make them understand what X is in their lives. I cannot be in Zolowo town telling somebody about two trains leaving Chicago, one going east, one going west, leaving at this time. That person has never been to Chicago.
Thank you.
Look, in this country, every state has their own testing guidelines that students take for high school. That's why in Minnesota we have the MCA, and in Iowa they have something different. For you to say that you can build a standardized testing for multiple countries, it doesn't matter how many tests you send back and forth, it will always be biased.
Test bias, exactly.
And I'm saying this because the new SAT, we wrote a new SAT to take our bias. So I don't know what it means to have biases in the examination. I think the government Liberia would be well served to take that money, put that in somewhere else. And because we already have people at the Ministry of Education in charge of testing and evaluation, let's use those people. Let's call all of our experts. Let's write tests that are local so that we can have curriculum that are localized so that our students will know when X hits them in the face is right in FEMA market and X is not in the book.
Thank you.
Exactly. That's an amen.
That's a valid point. And let me just quickly just say this, please. In Texas, when we're testing, we have to protest because imagine we don't have snow in Texas. One of the questions that said, if you went to the Aspen to ski, right? So your typical Black American child in Texas never went to ski, they had to remove that. We fought for test bias. So I agree with the brother 100%.
And that's what frustrated me. You know, I changed because of the war to economics at LU and I was doing accounting. I couldn't understand mortgage. Nobody could explain that to me.
Look at
and
that.
Really, up to today, I hate accounting. Because I couldn't understand what I was in Monrovia College doing a bank reconciliation statement. I've never been to a bank, and you were telling me to reconcile.
Contextualization.
This is terrible. Right now in Liberia, the people are so confused. Some people saying kilometers, some people saying meters.
Oh yeah, it's mixed up.
Or miles. You know, everybody. Oh, I'm reading chemistry. We never used to say what all this foolishness for. Anyway, Jimmy, you're closing, and then we can
now we're buying current. We're buying current. We're not buying power. Because back in the day, we're buying kilowatts. Now you buy by amps.
Yeah.
Because that is a Ghanaian thing, right? Now we buy amps. Everybody talking about amps in Liberia. We're buying current now instead of power, which is what we used to buy in Liberia from LEC, which was measured in kilowatts hour.
Much needed
education. And that is interesting. Is when I was going to Banga and I saw instead it used to be mile, all the traffic signs you have. I think it's just a matter of competition. The Chinese people do the project.
It's not competition, it's confusion.
Yeah. They want to see themselves
as confusion.
They want to see themselves as competing with Western power, so they want to diminish the Western influence, and they take out the mile and it's just all kinds of stuff going on. But look, Dennis, again, I just made a point. I think this show has been great. We just need to have an improved political atmosphere in our country that will have to do with stable political leadership.
Yes.
People who know what to do. You know, it's been sad. And I know, Dennis, you don't like any attempt to deviate from the main topic into politics, because that is the natural tendency. And so I'm guided by that. But look, that is the main issue. We need people who will come and prioritize education to make the necessary adjustment for appropriate budgetary allocation for education. That we need to do. Again, I must repeat, I did work with YF for a couple of years, and I had some colleagues there, including former transport minister who is in Banga, Samson Tonala Vapla, and then the Associate Supreme Court Justice. Many of them are there. They were subject officers. They would travel to Ghana. They would ask for questions that pertain to Liberia to integrate into the question bank. But the question might be maybe the representation of the Liberian questions was not sufficient, and we need to broaden it. I'm often very let me say reluctant to just advocate for change when there could be other ways to implement the change without just implementing a sweeping change like that. So that is something we need to look at. I think there is a lot we can gain from being a part of the YF system in our country, so that when there is war again,
there's nothing to gain there, Jimmy.
I was supposed to say, what is that to gain?
There's nothing to gain. But let's leave it at that. At 4 o'clock today, right here on Focus on Liberia, you watch On Point. These guys will debate on political topics, one of which is the sanction and the responses. Also at 6 o'clock, join me in Hello Pastor, where we're going to be discussing Christmas. There are some myths, there are some beliefs, there are certain things. Is Christmas really in the Bible? Should we be celebrating Christmas? What's the harm in celebrating if it's not? Join me at 7 p.m. with Reverend Emmanuel Collin. You don't want to miss that. Well, Elaine, Cisse, and James, I want to thank you so much for coming. We're going to do this again. Until then,
It
We
was
want to
so
also
nice
thank
meeting
our
you, my
viewers.
sister, and my brother James. Nice meeting you all.
No, sure.
Nice meeting you.
Yep. Glad to see you too.
We're going to close with
Bye.
our song that says, whether you believe we should take WAEC or not, we are all Liberians. Have a good day.
We are
Bye.
Liberia. Liberia is our home.